The title of my sermon today is Rowdy Self-Love. I am so in love with you, enthusiastically devoted to you. Sorry, I'm not talking to you all, though I do love you. I love you because I choose to love and embody love. But in this moment, I'm not talking to you. I am talking to that guy that I see on the screen. I'm talking to myself. I delight in myself on the daily. People don't know quite what to do with it. My love for myself makes people uncomfortable, I have to admit. Get a room, they might say. And it's a good thing that I do have a room. My room has candles and often coffee and a delicious weighted blanket that anchors me to my body. My room also has Alexa that helps me feel less lonely when I ask her to play me music in the middle of the night. My room is a sanctuary. I read and meditate and enjoy my company. I think I'm amazing. I felt amazing writing this sermon. I feel amazing giving it. My favorite thing about myself is probably my clarity and ease of communication. I have met people smarter than I am and know of people who are better communicators. But I don't know that I've ever met anyone who can think and communicate as clearly and cleanly and efficiently and beautifully as I can. I am also grateful for how consistently wonderstruck I am, just gob-smacked by the beauty of existence. I delight in every detail, from the buried sunshine taste of a golden beet, try them, to the impressionistic mountain ranges that coffee stains leave on my mug, to the texture of my desk, to the hidden patterns in well-designed clothes. I express grateful wonder for my body, my mind, my soul. I appreciate how sensitive I am, though that particular trait exacts a terrible price. Do you feel uncomfortable hearing me celebrate myself? Probably, because our culture tells us not to celebrate ourselves. I'll tell you a dark secret. Our culture tells us not to love ourselves, mostly so it can sell us crap that it tells us will help us feel better about ourselves, but really we will feel worse, which will motivate us to buy more stuff. It is a deadly effective system, and that system is based in your dissatisfaction and abandonment of yourself. As Brené Brown notes, the bad news is that self-love is subversive in our culture. This process has to be disciplined daily practice. Then she adds the good news. We can do subversive. Nothing and nobody can take away the power that comes from owning our stories. Another reason why we hold back showing up for ourselves is because at a deep level, I think we believe that if we don't show up for ourselves, then somebody else will have to show up for us. This unspoken deal with the universe is hard to acknowledge, but I don't think I'm wrong. We are afraid that if we don't need anyone, we won't get anyone. We are afraid. And this unspoken story is backwards and counterproductive, but it has its own tender logic. Like most of us in our culture, I was trained to be a romantic codependent. I believed that love is life, not just believed. The idea that the only life worth living is relationship was so deeply baked into me that my second divorce felt like death. I would have rather died than gone through that. And in a very real way, that version of me did die. That version of me needed to be put to rest, but it was a brutal initiation into reality. It's a good thing I spend heartbreak so well, because breaking my heart is a habit of mine. I love quickly and fiercely and thoroughly. I instantly assess and invest in connection. No one is replaceable for me. And once I love someone, I love them forever. The curse of a photographic memory and soul-wrenching emotion that results in a constant state of PTSD. I will confess that there are first dates from years ago that still haunt me. there is a particular relationship that, though brief, changed my entire relationship to relationships. I came across an acquaintance on a dating site and asked, "Did you mean to like me?" Yes, social media and especially dating sites are very weird, and we are not evolved for this, which makes it difficult. This woman and I had been vaguely aware of each other for years, but we had never met. Meeting her felt like tectonic snapping into place that realigned me. She felt like the answer to everything. She felt like home. Meeting her made my whole life feel worth it. She felt the same for a week. Her polite disengagement triggered an earthquake that crushed the greatest peace and meaning I had ever felt to that point. Yes, in a week. Yes, I'm dramatic. Meeting her felt like she had woven tendrils of love into every space and corner in my soul, and her disconnect ripped them all out at once. I felt empty and devastated, to put it mildly. But the reason I'm sharing this is that what I did with that rubble and desolation I felt in my heart and soul is that I filled it with myself. I filled myself. That heartbreak cleaned out and cleared out my previous ways of being and demanded attention. And so I showed up. I actually designed a rebirth ritual that involved driving over 100 miles and leaping into a lake on leap day. I honored and invested in myself. And ever since then, I have loved myself better. I didn't know how I would go on from that heartbreak, and now I am grateful for it. I lost this dramatic love and gained a more excellent, more precious love, a love with myself. And that self-love came in very handy during the catastrophe of COVID. In the early days of the pandemic, I went for over 6 weeks without touching anyone. I don't recommend that. I longed for even a pet, a cat, anything to provide connection and comfort. Once again, I found the answer in myself. I took more baths, often with candles and whiskey. I began to practice meditating, one hand on my chest, the other on my stomach. I became the companion I craved so earnestly. So how do I know that with all this self-love, I am not a self-absorbed narcissist as opposed to a self-absorbed empath? I was raised and abused by an actual diagnosed narcissist psychopath, so I know when I see one. Narcissism is named after Narcissus, as is the flower, a character in a Greek myth who loved himself more than he loved anyone else. No one was good enough for him. No one was beautiful enough for him. Gaston from Beauty and the Beast comes to mind as a modern Narcissus. Narcissus finally found someone good enough for him as he caught a glance of a beautiful figure in the river. Narcissus fell in love with his own reflection. He gave up on life and others because he was so caught up in the idea of himself and his own beauty and self-importance. In a moment, I will contrast narcissism with self-love and self-compassion. For now, it is important to note that Narcissus didn't necessarily love himself. He didn't show up for himself. He fell in love with a reflection. He fell in love with the idea of himself, an idea without reality or substance. Narcissistic personality disorder is defined as the disorder in which a person has an inflated sense of self-importance. Narcissistic personality disorder is found more commonly in men. The cause is unknown, but likely involves a combination of genetic and environmental factors. Symptoms include an excessive need for admiration, disregard for others' feelings, an inability to handle any criticism, and a sense of entitlement. Cause unknown? Well, perhaps it's because our culture conditions and even celebrates men as self-absorbed, entitled toddlers who never need to hold the weight of their own actions or existence. One could even imagine such a person becoming president. Toxic masculinity is the original sin of our culture that we as men must overcome. That's a conversation for another time. Here's the irony of narcissism. The arrogant and boastful crave constant attention and affirmation precisely because they don't love themselves. Nothing is ever enough because they have no substance. They constantly gaze at their reflection, or better, find others to praise them because deep down they know they are empty disappointments. So instead of growing up and showing up for themselves, they dedicate themselves to using others as twisted mirrors of validation. They are lost in the river of illusion, and others pay the price, subsidizing their self-involved avoidance. So what about me? How can I be sure I am not also narcissist? Well, I don't need to be special. I am exceptional, singular even, but that is different than needing to be special. I don't need to be any different than I am. Yes, I am a creative genius, but I'm also avoidant around plenty of things. My brain tends to shut down if it thinks a task is inefficient. I am comfortable owning my shortcomings as well as my excellence. And I know I am not a narcissist because I delight in all excellence, whether or not it is related to myself. Even when someone is in competition with me, I feel so happy for their success and their accomplishments. My greatest motivation is well-being for everyone. It's not about me. My greatest motivation is well-being for everyone. Finally, I love feedback. I love learning that I'm wrong. Doesn't happen often. I love the opportunity to be better, to become a version of myself that lives and loves even better. Here's another thing. I love myself for you. I love myself for you. I love myself for your sake. I want everyone to love themselves as exuberantly as I love myself. My radical, rowdy, enthusiastic, subversive love is activism. My self-love is activism. I unabashedly love myself and share that love because I want everyone to partake of that love, not partake in my love, though I share that love freely. I want you to partake of your love. I want you to love yourself. Pause a moment. Ask yourself, why on earth would you not love yourself? Wherever you go, there you are. You are always with yourself. When you aren't avoiding yourself, which most of us tragically dedicate our lives to doing. If not you, who? Each of us wanders through our days, often feeling forlorn and abandoned, while carrying within ourselves an infinite treasure. We have everything we need. We are everything we need. You can be the great love of your life. There is no other way, actually. If you live and die without learning that you are your own greatest love, you have betrayed yourself. This is the greatest tragedy, not star-crossed lovers who we love to watch in shows and movies. By the way, young love is incredibly unimpressive. I often think of that as I visit with couples who have devoted themselves to each other for decades. Just this week, I sat with a couple married 70 years. The husband thought I was their grandson while his wife tried to correct him. I was honored to be his grandson during that dinner. I too have a hard time with the gospel of self-love. Yes, this terrifying truth makes me uncomfortable. Yes, I have also spent decades receiving my affirmation from the idea of relationship. Yes, I still struggle being single, haunted by the cultural seduction that I need someone else. I prefer partnership, but that is vitally different than needing it. Need nothing, savor everything is how I have overcome the toxic masculinity and original sin of entitlement. Jesus was asked, "What is the greatest commandment?" We often miss the commandment hidden in his double answer: love God, love your neighbor as yourself. We too often distill this directive to a duality: love God, check; love your neighbor, check. But we miss that third and foundational command: love yourself. Well, how do you love yourself? Practice. Narcissism is self-absorption. I playfully claim the term self-centered because what on earth else should I be centered in? I am anchored in my principles and practice. I am rooted in my love and commitment to myself. I love because of what I am, not because of anyone else. I want to conclude by talking about self-acceptance, self-compassion, and self-love. I'm glad that we do not hear so much about self-esteem as when I was a child, because that self-esteem is a misguided target. Curious, compassionate acceptance is a far better target, and self-love a far more foundational approach to healthy relationship to self and others. I'm often asked, how do you love yourself? Well, you love yourself just like you love anyone else. Learn about yourself. Invest in yourself. Do things you enjoy with yourself. It's almost comical that we don't know ourselves until we take the trouble to have a conversation with ourselves about who we really are. What are your highest values? What is your favorite book? What is your favorite music? What is your favorite movie? See, you don't necessarily have a ready answer because you haven't taken the time to relationship with yourself to the degree that you relationship with others. Take yourself on a bloody first date already. Maybe you'll get lucky. Self-acceptance and self-compassion are essential for the first step in building trust with yourself. Be honest, fully honest. It's challenging, and our brains are literally designed and evolved to avoid uncomfortable truth. As we cultivate self-compassion and self-acceptance, we harvest the courage to name the full truth about ourselves. We as humans like calling things names. We like talking about virtues and vices, good and bad. But have you ever noticed that there are positive and negative ways about talking about the same traits? Is your friend stubborn or just determined? Ditzy or free-spirited, irresponsible or adaptable, self-absorbed or confident? It is powerful to think of what we commonly label virtues and vices, strengths and weaknesses. We can just name these as traits. This naming can be a vital exercise in self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-love. Once we name our tendencies and traits, we can focus on those traits that we need to cultivate in a particular moment. For example, I am not a naturally patient person. Shocking, right? My thoughts are lightning in the bottle of my brain, and my mind is an efficiency engine. It usually takes about a week to digest an hour with me. You're welcome. But I have become patient through practice. Serve the imprisoned and dying was a key element in my call to ministry, and it has been sitting with the dying and incarcerated that has trained into me an unflagging patience and presence. You have no idea how quiet I can get. That's not what you need in this moment. Finally, in addition to the way we think about our traits, we can express these traits in healthy and unhealthy ways. Even the traits that we loathe can be redeemed into healthy versions of themselves. For example, apathy can be anchored into acceptance, obsession can be relaxed into focus, and even cruelty can be reformed into motivation. Think about it. The only difference between cruelty and motivation is the motivation of the one who seems cruel. Anyone with a personal trainer can attest to this. Why are you torturing me? You cry during leg day at 6 a.m. on Wednesday. I've already mentioned that we love ourselves by investing in ourselves, getting to know ourselves, spending time with ourselves. That's an invitation of COVID. We build relationship with ourselves in the same way we build relationship with anyone. As a simple practice, I recommend that you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. I value you. I'm proud of you. It may seem silly at first, but this practice will nourish you more effectively than you think. Kristen Neff gives further guidance in her book, Self-Compassion. Recommend it. Quote, self-compassion entails three core components. First, it requires self-kindness, that we be gentle and understanding with ourselves rather than harshly critical and judgmental. Second, it requires recognition of our common humanity, feeling connected with others in the experience of life rather than feeling isolated and alienated by our suffering. Third, it requires mindfulness, that we hold our experience in balanced awareness rather than ignoring our pain or exaggerating it. I'm a big fan of exaggerating it. Used to be. Western culture places great emphasis on being kind to our friends, family, and neighbors who are struggling. Not so when it comes to ourselves. When we make a mistake or fail in some way, we're more likely to hit ourselves over the head with a club than putting a supportive arm around our own shoulder. Most likely, even the thought of comforting ourselves in this way seems absurd. Unfortunately, these attitudes rob us of one of our most powerful coping mechanisms when dealing with the difficulties of life. Self-kindness, by definition, means that we stop the constant self-judgment and disparaging internal commentary that most of us have come to see as normal. It requires us to understand our foibles and failures instead of condemning them. It entails clearly seeing the extent to which we harm ourselves through relentless self-criticism and ending our internal war. But self-kindness involves more than merely stopping self-judgment. It involves actively comforting ourselves, responding just as we would to a dear friend in need. It means that we allow ourselves to be emotionally moved by our own pain, stopping to say, this is really difficult right now. How can I care for and comfort myself in this moment? With self-kindness, we soothe and calm our troubled minds. We make a peace offering of warmth and gentleness and sympathy from ourselves to ourselves so that true healing can occur. A unity reading of the Great Commandment proves even more powerful than the reminder to love ourselves as well as loving God and loving each other. In unity thought, loving God is loving ourselves. We are divine. We are the source of love. We are the elemental force of love that the universe brings forth in abundance. As poets and now scientists confirm, we have all the love we could ever need. We are all the love we could ever need. When I was studying Buddhism, I thought I was doing well when I resolved to respect the flow of relationships and love. Unity taught me that as accepting as that story seems, it is still based in assumptions of lack and separation. Unity taught me that I am connected to all those I love and have ever loved. Most importantly, I can become the love of my life because I am love. And thus the source of what seemed to be my greatest inescapable torture has become my greatest source of strength. Charles Fillmore taught, God is your higher self and is in constant waiting for you. He loves to serve and will attend faithfully to the most minute details of your daily life. Unity teacher Rick Busby adds, in the 12 powers, Charles Fillmore defines love as the harmonizing power among the 12 creative faculties of humankind. Biblically speaking, love is the greatest creative power of all. At its fullest expression, the creative power of love harmonizes all discord, strife, critical judgment, bias, and prejudice. Love neutralizes fear and engenders a sense of safety and connection. Love transforms all fears of separation from God, from others, and even from our own selves. Love heals all things in need of healing and restores our awareness to the foundational unity that we share with everyone and everything. The creative energy of love heals any inner sense of separation, transforming our consciousness into an experience of unity, safety, and peace. In unity, we affirm that there is only one power and one presence active in the universe and in our lives. Further, we affirm that this power is absolute good and ever present everywhere, omnipresence. The power of love is the foundational creative power, the essence of God. Love is the optimal creative energy. Nothing would ever come into being without the creative power of love. I love you. Yes, you. Take a moment. Wrap your arms around yourself and give yourself a big hug. Breathe in that embrace, that love. Don't hold back anymore, or at least as much. Commit to committing to yourself. Show up for yourself. As Elsa is told in Frozen 2, you are the one you have been waiting for all of your life. In the name of love, amen.